Butterflies danced in Emily's stomach as she prepared for her first job interview in years. The morning sunlight streaming through her bedroom window did little to calm her racing heart, but there was an undercurrent of excitement beneath her nerves. After dedicating 4 precious years to raising her twin boys, she felt ready to step back into the professional arena, though the prospect made her pulse quicken. The twins, now 4 years old and bursting with their own independence, had unknowingly given their mother permission to chase her dreams again. They were embarking on their own adventures at preschool, and Emily knew in her heart that it was time for her to do the same. Standing before her mirror, she smoothed down her carefully chosen navy blazer, a armor of sorts for the battle ahead. The drive to her children's school was filled with their cheerful chatter, a welcome distraction from her mounting anxiety. After dropping them off with quick kisses and watching their little backpacks bounce as they ran to their classroom, Emily allowed herself a moment of reflection. The years at home had been beautiful, but something inside her yearned for the challenge of corporate life once again. The office building loomed before her, a gleaming tower of glass and steel reaching toward the clouds. Emily parked her car in the visitor spot, her hands gripping the steering wheel as she conducted one final mental review. She rehearsed potential interview questions under her breath, her responses polished from hours of practice in front of her bathroom mirror. A quick check in the rearview mirror confirmed her makeup was flawless, her honey blonde hair perfectly styled to project both professionalism and approachability. The lobby buzzed with morning energy as Emily took her seat in the waiting area. She observed the parade of professionals streaming through the revolving doors, each one appearing to be in their own private universe. Designer suits and clicking heels created a symphony of corporate success, while manicured fingers danced across smartphone screens in an endless digital ballet. The scene was exactly as she remembered it, yet somehow she felt like an outsider looking in. Just as the familiar anxiety began to creep back in, a breath of fresh air burst through the front doors in the form of a man who seemed to defy every corporate stereotype. In his early 40s, he stood out like a burst of color in a monochrome world. Instead of the standard business suit, he sported comfortable clothing that suggested personality over pretense. A well-worn backpack hung from one shoulder, and his feet were clad in quality running shoes that had clearly seen many miles. A cycling helmet dangled from his fingers, suggesting a morning commute far different from the luxury cars parked outside. "Good morning, Emma." His voice carried across the lobby, warm and genuine. "Isn't it just the perfect day for a ride?" The receptionist's face lit up at his greeting, a stark contrast to the usual perfunctory exchanges Emily had been witnessing. This mysterious man moved through the space like a warm current in a cool sea, acknowledging everyone in his path with authentic interest, from the security guard adjusting his tie to the cleaning lady pushing her cart. When his eyes met Emily's, they crinkled with genuine warmth. "Here for the interview, I bet? I'm John, and I'll be right with you after I get my morning chaos sorted out." His handshake was firm but friendly, instantly melting away a layer of Emily's anxiety. There was something about his presence that made the imposing building feel more like a welcoming space than a corporate fortress. John's office, when Emily finally entered it, told a story all its own. Unlike the sterile environments she'd expected, this space breathed with life and achievement. One wall showcased an impressive collection of medals and trophies, while another displayed action shots of John in various states of athletic pursuit, cycling through mountain passes, crossing finish lines with arms raised in triumph, and participating in what appeared to be numerous sporting events. "Those medals must represent some impressive victories," Emily commented, genuinely intrigued by this unconventional executive. John's laugh was as genuine as his earlier greetings. "Actually, most of them are just for showing up and finishing. I'm usually somewhere in the middle of the pack, but that's never bothered me. It's the joy of participating, of pushing yourself, that really makes it worthwhile." His eyes sparkled with passion as he spoke, and Emily found herself drawn into his philosophy of finding pleasure in the journey rather than just the destination. The interview flowed naturally from there. Emily's preparations served her well as she articulated her professional journey, including how she'd kept her skills sharp during her time away from the corporate world. Her responses were confident and thoughtful, demonstrating that motherhood had added to her capabilities rather than diminished them. As their conversation drew to a close, John reached across his desk to gather some papers, his movement causing a small silver picture frame to topple over. The resulting clatter broke the professional atmosphere that had settled over the room, and neither of them could have predicted how this small accident would become the catalyst for an extraordinary connection. The photo frame clattered as Emily reached to pick it up, but the moment her eyes landed on the image within, time seemed to freeze. There, perfectly preserved behind the glass, was her mother's familiar smile, the same photograph that had appeared in the local papers after her passing. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the frame back on John's desk, her mind suddenly swimming with questions that threatened to overwhelm her professional composure. The remainder of the interview passed in a blur of motion and sound. Emily's thoughts had become a whirlwind, making it difficult to focus on John's words until his voice cut through her confusion. Emily? Emily? As I was saying, my secretary will handle all the details for your start date. His warm smile broadened as he added, Congratulations, the position is yours if you'd like it. The job offer, which should have been the highlight of her morning, now competed with the storm of emotions unleashed by that unexpected photograph. Emily managed to thank John with what she hoped was appropriate enthusiasm, but her mind was already racing down countless paths of possibility, trying to understand the connection between her late mother and her new employer. During the drive home, Emily's thoughts drifted to her mother's legacy. 8 years had passed since the tragic car accident that took her away, but her impact on the community remained vibrant and alive. As a dedicated teacher at the local school, she had been more than just an educator, she had been a beacon of hope and change. Her social project for vulnerable children had transformed countless young lives, earning recognition throughout the region for its innovative approach to supporting at-risk youth. Emily's grip tightened on the steering wheel as she considered the possibilities. Could John have been one of her mother's students? The timing seemed plausible, but something about that explanation felt incomplete. The photograph on his desk wasn't a casual snapshot, it was the same image that had accompanied the news of her mother's passing, the one that captured her characteristic warmth and dedication to her community. The first weeks at her new position flew by in a whirlwind of training sessions and introductions. Emily immersed herself in learning the intricacies of her role, quickly finding her footing in the company's dynamic environment. Her colleagues welcomed her warmly, and she soon found herself part of the office's social fabric. Yet beneath the surface of her professional adaptation, the mystery of John and her mother's photograph continued to simmer in her thoughts. Sometimes, during quiet moments at her desk, Emily would wonder if she had somehow misinterpreted what she'd seen, if perhaps the woman in the photo just bore a striking resemblance to her mother. But this rationalization would quickly dissolve when she remembered that the exact same photograph sat in a frame on her own mantelpiece at home. It was unmistakably the image that had accompanied the news coverage of her mother's tragic accident, the one that had appeared in local newspapers and across social media platforms as the community mourned the loss of such a beloved figure. As Emily settled into her role, she began to notice something unusual about the office culture. In her previous corporate experiences, it was almost a given that employees would occasionally grumble about management or share whispered criticisms of their superiors. Here, however, conversations about John carried a distinctly different tone. Her colleagues spoke of him with genuine respect and admiration, often sharing stories of his leadership style and his ability to balance business success with human connection. This made the revelation at a family gathering all the more shocking. During a casual conversation about her new job, Emily mentioned John's name to her uncle Robert, not expecting the dramatic reaction that followed. Her uncle's face darkened as he leaned in close, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Oh, Emily," he said, shaking his head with genuine concern. "I'm so sorry you're working for that man. I had the misfortune of working under him about a decade ago, and let me tell you, he was absolutely unbearable. Arrogant, short-tempered, the kind of boss who made everyone's life miserable. Honestly, he was the worst superior I've ever had." Emily felt as if she'd been doused with cold water. She quickly pulled out her phone and showed her uncle a recent company photo featuring John. Her uncle's expression confirmed it. This was indeed the same man, though his description seemed to depict someone entirely different from the warm, engaging leader she knew. This new piece of information added another layer to the growing mystery. What could have catalyzed such a dramatic transformation in John's personality? How did her mother's photograph fit into this puzzle? The questions multiplied, but answers remained elusive. In her daily interactions with John, Emily found herself carefully weighing each word, searching for an opening to broach the subject of the photograph. But the timing never seemed quite right. Either the moment was too rushed, the setting too public, or the conversation too focused on work matters. As her boss, John maintained a professional yet approachable demeanor, but Emily was acutely aware of the delicate balance she needed to strike between satisfying her curiosity and maintaining appropriate workplace boundaries. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during a routine budget meeting. As the department's financial analyst, Emily had been called to John's office to review quarterly reports. As they pored over the numbers, something caught her attention. A significant portion of the company's profits was being channeled into various charitable institutions and social projects. Her heart skipped a beat when she noticed that among these beneficiaries was the very project her mother had founded years ago. This discovery felt like the first real clue in understanding the connection between John and her mother. As they reviewed the financial allocations, Emily sensed an opportunity to finally address the photograph that had been haunting her thoughts since her interview. The numbers before them seemed to tell a story of their own, one of transformation and dedication to causes bigger than business success. Emily carefully considered her next words, her heart pounding as she gathered the courage to address the mystery that had been consuming her thoughts. "Looking at these financial reports," she began, keeping her voice steady, "I'm struck by your generosity toward these social projects. It's quite remarkable." John's expression softened, a shadow of remembrance crossing his features. "You know, I wasn't always the person you see today," he admitted, leaning back in his chair. "There was a time when generosity was the furthest thing from my mind. I was selfish, bitter, the kind of person who measured success purely in dollars and cents." He paused, his fingers unconsciously touching his chest. "My story begins with a little boy who learned far too young that his heart wasn't working properly. Imagine being told you can't run, can't play sports, can't do any of the things that make childhood magical." His words carried the weight of old pain, yet his voice remained gentle. "That kind of restriction does something to a person. It turned me into someone I'm not proud of, angry, resentful, taking out my frustrations on everyone around me." Emily listened intently, her own heart racing as she sensed they were approaching the intersection of their shared history. John continued, his voice growing more somber. "The doctors finally told me what I'd always feared. Without a heart transplant, my time was limited. The chances of finding a match were slim, and each day felt like walking on a tightrope above an endless void." He drew a deep breath, his eyes drifting to the photograph on his desk. "Then came what some would call a miracle, though I've never been able to think of it that way. Because for one family, it was the darkest day of their lives. A car accident took someone's life, and saved mine." Emily's breath caught in her throat as the pieces finally clicked into place. The world seemed to slow down as John reached for the familiar photograph, handling it with reverence. "This remarkable woman," he said softly, "gave me more than just a heart. She gave me a second chance at life, and with it, a profound responsibility." His fingers traced the frame gently. "I found this photo in an online article. The family wasn't ready for contact with organ recipients at the time, understandably so. But I needed something tangible, a reminder of the gift I'd been given. So I keep her photo here, where I can see it every day. It reminds me to be the kind of person worthy of such a sacrifice." Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she watched this man, her boss, speak about her mother with such profound respect. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "She was my mother." John's eyes widened in recognition, pieces of his own puzzle falling into place. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of their connection filling the room with an almost tangible presence. "Emily," John finally said, his voice thick with emotion, "I want you to know that I've tried to honor your mother's gift every single day. This heart," he placed his hand over his chest, "has allowed me to transform my life. I can run marathons now, climb mountains, but more importantly, It's taught me to be the kind of person who lifts others up instead of tearing them down." Emily wiped away tears, a smile breaking through her emotion. "She would have loved knowing this," she said softly. "My mother believed that every act of kindness creates ripples that continue long after we're gone. Seeing how you've carried her spirit forward, supporting the very projects she cared about, it's like she's still here, still making a difference." In that moment, both Emily and John recognized the beautiful symmetry of their situation. Through tragedy had come transformation, through loss had come legacy. The heart that had once beaten in Emily's mother's chest now drove a man dedicated to continuing her work of making the world a better place. Their chance encounter had revealed how a single act of organ donation had created an unbreakable chain of kindness, touching countless lives through John's transformed leadership and generosity. In a world that often seems disconnected and cold, their story stood as a testament to the enduring power of human connection and the way love continues to echo long after loss.